Welcome to the Love, Law, and Life Makeover podcast, a go-to for hope, faith, and joy in changing your life. I'm Neil Presley Cox, lawyer, speaker, and author of Hope Lines. I have an easy-to-find website, neilpresleycox.com. You can't miss it. And a nice welcome for my presenter and co-host, Kelsy Gibbs.
So, this is a really good chapter.
What chapter is that?
We're talking about the Jailhouse Dad.
Oh, Jailhouse Dad. I love it.
Oh my gosh, Neil, this is horrible.
It's a true. There are a lot of men like that.
How many, would you say, like, if you had to say, like, the percentage of men in the world or in the country, let's try that. Is this like a normal, like, hey, you just need to pay
Well,
attention, one in three guys, or
no,
what is
this guy is like one of the worst of the worst because he's got so many kids with so many women, and he's using hard drugs and just a big criminal. So, he's kind of on the tilt of really, a bad apple, bad guy.
it?
Um, at the same time, the amount of havoc that one man can wreak upon society is amazing because every time he has a baby, he's creating a chain of chaos in an entire family. It's not just one person that's being hurt.
Yeah.
So, you could multiply each individual situation by probably seven. I don't know why I come up with that number. So if he's got 8 babies with 7 women or 9, you're looking at 56 or 63 people that have been just devastated by this guy, just in the context of having children. Of course, he's got other contexts in which he devastates lives. So one person creates havoc in, 100 people's lives.
Yeah, that's true. I think it was interesting because my aunt was talking about when her sons were teenagers, she was telling them 'cause I think like that's when like sperm donors started getting into a big thing, and she was like, "You will be held accountable for your children. So you don't know who these kids are going to, how they're going to be raised, or what they're going to do, and you're going to be held accountable for something you had nothing to do with, or not well, nothing to do with after the initial act." And
I think every culture has the attitude that what we do to our children is the paramount consideration. And the Bible talks about it. What we do to our children, what we do with children that come into our orbit is going to be very seriously looked at. It's a serious subject.
serious subject. Yeah, it definitely is. This guy is he's horrible. Even when the judge is asking him like, how many children do you have? And he's like, 5, we think. Like,
He doesn't get it. He doesn't really care. It's
I
always
mean,
someone else's fault. It's a lot of the classic narcissistic drug addict stuff, but it's just so much worse. And here's the thing, I going into the jail over the years, I always go into the jail and speak with defendants. And, I've met guys like this time and time again. And, the fact that they committed this crime or that crime, if it wasn't a crime against a person, it didn't affect me emotionally, really. Even if they're on their fifth felony or something. But what really upset me is the attitude about the children in the guy's lives. It's like, okay, so you commit felony after felony. I get that. You're just a criminal. You don't give a damn. But all these kids whose lives are being wrecked, and there's no societal recourse to stop a guy like that. I just found it devastating thinking of the train wreck of children and young mothers and the grandparents and family members and all the fallout over the years. Gosh.
well, and so I'm a little bit confused over this particular type of person as well they they'll still pay money, like for instance, in the story it talks about if he wants to get you know, custody rights or you know, more interaction with his kids or whatever, he's gonna have to pay his lawyer $2,500 retainer. But he knows in his mind that if he's not able to see his kids, he's just gonna sign the rights away. So why on earth is he even pretending? Like, why do they pretend to care when they obviously like when they really just don't? Is it like a power play? Is it just a ego boost? What is it?
Excellent question. I believe that it's a combination of things, one of which is there's a sense of wanting to punish the woman that you were with that is now turned against you and saying things against you or not cooperating with your whatever your scheme is at the moment. That outrage is an egotistical, narcissistic man like the man in the story. And so he becomes really punitive towards the woman that had the most recent woman that has turned against him. I think that's a piece. The other one is, you know, in order to live with ourselves, I think if we're doing bad things, and then we have to construct a sort of justification and or denial pyramid so that we can live with ourselves doing things that if we really looked at it, we would know that they're wrong, because I think we all have a soul. We all have somewhere ingrained in that soul a sense of right and wrong, of good and evil. So if we're doing bad things, there has to be some sense of denial, some sense of justification and blaming others. And so a man like him has to put together a really twisted version of that, an extreme version of that, so that he doesn't have to be confronted with himself or can at least attempt to avoid it.
Okay. I just feel like that's a lot of work.
It would be a lot of
I
work.
This is a lot of work. It's a lot of money just for that. That's it. That's
But he
oh, I guess
hasn't
that's
paid the
why.
retainer yet. He's just chewing on it right now in the jail.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, he hasn't actually put forth that ever. I mean, but if he's paying child support on any of the kids, like wouldn't it just be easier to just sign the rights away versus like I mean, he's $5,000 in debt in this story for this particular person.
He doesn't care about that. He'll never get caught up. He'll never pay child support voluntarily. And whether he's in debt 177,000, I've seen child support debts like that, or 5,000 or 30, it doesn't much matter to him.
Mm,
That's in the rearview mirror. He's looking for the latest high, the latest female conquest.
okay.
A scary person to have in your life.
Yeah. That, I mean that. Yeah, that's very scary.
And he has
Um,
the ability, it isn't something I touched on in the story, but you can extrapolate and think about it. And he has the ability to attract some women, even after he gets out of jail again. There'll be a certain percentage of women, certain kinds of women that he will have the ability to prey on.
so I liked what you had said about how to kind of avoid guys like this, or what did you say, men or boys like this. Um, you said if you want to predict a person's future actions, the best place to start is with his or her past behavior. A person who neglects his children is not relationship material.
That's a deal breaker, or should be, right? If you, let's just say that you've got a child from a prior relationship. You start dating a man who has a child from a prior relationship. And if his rights were terminated to that child, or if he just doesn't express any interest or show or have that continuity of regular contact with that child, that is a huge red flag, or ought to be, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, especially if the mom is, actively in her kid's life and working really hard to be a good parent. Um, yeah, sorry that, like you said, a deal breaker.
And it's not to say that somebody maybe got into a bad relationship and a woman fought and fought to keep him from having a relationship with his child and he finally gave up. That happens, and it doesn't necessarily mean there should be condemnation of that man. But when you start getting into it's happened more than once, I don't think that the story that you're going to hear from a man like that it's these other women's fault is going to stand up to scrutiny. Unfortunately, when you start in a new relationship, rational scrutiny isn't what new relationships about. It's about uh, overlooking things and excitement and fever and emotions and passion and sex and all kinds of things that have nothing to do with really looking at the character of a person.
Yeah, and I had read an article or something about people in a what was it? It was something to the effect of people who are in a some people fall in love with love, but the people who fall in love with the person are the ones who end up like those are the successful ones. And I think, basically what you're saying is, look at the person, love them, so you don't get trapped by this feeling.
Yeah, yeah. It's just that the people who would benefit the most from this information are least likely to seek it or try to apply it. Young, vulnerable women that are already probably using controlled substances.
Oh, right. There was a mention in there of like he might have access to drugs. So essentially, like that's gonna enhance that love feeling more than likely toward the person
Yeah.
who's giving you what you want, right?
Yeah, and this just came to my mind, but older men on the prowl use money and power. Young drug addict men on the prowl use drugs. And it's a very old phrase, on the prowl. I realize that.
It's okay. This is for mature audiences.
Yeah, we need to put labels, warning labels on the podcast. You know, what
Um,
we didn't do in this discussion is outline the story in the beginning or uh,
I know we just
maybe the
jumped
intro. Maybe there will be an
right.
intro for each one that we'll do separately that just kind of does that. I don't know.
Well, I know we just kind of I initially I just had a quick question and then we just went through the whole thing. But
But
I
we
think
could maybe we could talk about that the beginning and then you could paste perhaps. I don't know. Right?
well, yeah, we I can see what I can do with it. But yeah, actually, let's go ahead and give a quick recap of the story. Um, this is called Jailhouse Dad: 7 kids with 7 women. Neil, do you want to give us like a quick overview of the story?
Yes, I'm Neil Presley Cox, author of Hope Lines, and this is Jailhouse Dad, probably my favorite story in the book, because I've seen men just like this in and out of the jails that have had children with so many women, uh, they can't even keep count themselves. And in the old days of Hollywood, seven was a big number. There's movies based on the number seven, and you've got Ma and Pa Kettle, and I don't know how many kids they had, but a family with 7 children, but those children are being raised by a mother and father. Well, now in this story, we've got a guy that isn't involved with any of his children, and he blames every one of the women with whom he's had a baby for him not having a relationship. All the while, committing multiple felonies and using drugs all the time and living a life of chaos and lack of devotion to anybody besides his own drug-fueled desires. And so he's in jail talking to his lawyer and blaming the latest mother of his child, number 7, presumably, for him not seeing the child. And then he gets into talking to the judge about a child support issue because he doesn't believe in paying child support for his 7 children. And it's a sort of a cautionary tale for young women about predators like this who use drugs and a sense of outlaw cool to form relationships with young women, and then he doesn't care if they get pregnant or not because he's only interested in himself. He's an essential prototypical narcissist, only the modern day type laced with drugs. And it's a really sad deal for anyone that falls under his so-called spell or orbit, because he's not going to be good relationship material, and he's going to be even less on the father front.
Yeah, thank you for that introduction.
I've talked to guys like that in the jail time and time again, and I get more outraged by the fact that they just don't give a doggone about these kids that they're fathering. I hate to use that term. And they're more concerned about getting out of jail, and I get more outraged by all these train wrecks they've left behind about the children than I do about their felony crimes most of the time, unless their felony crimes involve hurting someone else physically, that sort of thing.
Yeah, basically what they're doing is very traumatizing to more than just themselves. This is where it's not just what they're doing isn't just impacting them, in their life. It's impacting like so many, like literally generations, right? So
Rippling outward. All these children that don't have a father in their lives. We have an epidemic of children that don't have a father that is involved with raising them and protecting them. And guys like this are a big part of that problem.
what do you think the moms can do, or like in terms of raising their children who have, like, if they have a baby daddy like this, and they end up getting their wits about them at some point, they're like, okay, like I want to be a good mother, I want to raise my kid properly, whatever it is. Like, what is something that they can do to help in that process, as far as like, I mean, kids kids do better with a father, but if you have someone that toxic who's you know then it's, I mean, would you say, hey, you know what, like, in your opinion, right, is it better to be like, okay, hey, like, just cut it off, just, if you can get away from this guy and always like do that, or is it better to be like, hey, it's okay to, like, have the visitation rights? Like, what would you say is like a good balance for that?
Well, if you've had a baby with a man like the man in the story, Jailhouse Dad, uh, get an attorney who can do a good job on a parenting plan custody case and protect your child, because this person is not a suitable person to be around your child. I mean, this person is toxic, dangerous, on hard drugs, and not somebody you want around the child. So that would be my first thing. The hard part is that young women who are attracted to your so-called rebel, outlaw, drug addict, and perhaps the young women themselves are using drugs, and so they are very vulnerable to some older man or man that's 5 years older, say, that is willing to provide them with controlled substances. Very vulnerable to that, but they're not going to read the story. And so family members need to be very aware of how bad this really is. And I would suggest that some form of intervention to protect young ladies that start getting involved, sucked into a life like that with a man like that would be in order, because it's a very, very dangerous and unhealthy situation. Um, Fortunately, and I really do thank God for this, I see it time and again that a young woman that has a baby with a man like the man in the story, who's completely uninvolved, won't help support the child, won't parent. A lot of these young ladies grow up really fast. Nature sort of takes over and they grow up fast and they realize, I don't want a man like that in my life ever again. And so they get a lot wiser if they are able to move forward on drug addiction type issues and things like that. Then I see that in their next relationship, it's a much nicer situation with somebody who's much more of a, what you might call an old school gentleman, somebody that's going to be around and be a father and treat mom with respect.
Thank you. That's super helpful for our listeners. Did you have anything else to add?
Just that I think people, whatever situation you're in, even if you're in a very bad situation, take a step back, take a deep breath, and realize you've made mistakes. Everybody's made mistakes. You talk to old people, you'll find out they'll say, I made lots of mistakes, and we survive our mistakes. So try to stop beating yourself up and putting pressure on yourself, and just one day at a time, use the 5% rule to take your anxiety down just a little bit and realize that you're going to do really good by your baby and you're going to move forward and it's going to be okay.
Thanks so much for listening. We're here talking about Hope Lines. We're going through the 18 stories of this book. So if you haven't had a chance to check it out, definitely go. You can go on our website, neilpresleycox.com, and download either you can just download like a specific story or you can download the entire book. If you have any questions, you can always reach out as well. There's a contact form on there.
It's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon. Thanks for coming.